Hello, my name is Nicole, and thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Today, we're going to take a look at mental breakdown or mental disorder. We have individuals who unfortunately have gone through this. Those who are currently going through this, they're not going to be able to explain too much because their mind is under attack. Unfortunately, we have some ignorance, especially in the African American community, when it comes to things like mental disorders in general. You have individuals who will say things like, why don't she just snap out of it? I mean, come on now, she done went through this and went through that. Isn't she better now? Okay. There's the cold-hearted individual, that one that could care less. You just simply show up to the next family holiday event. You just make sure you bring some chicken and some macaroni and cheese and cornbread and don't act stupid when you show up here. You see, I know some people don't want to hear it, and some folks will even say, well, that's a bit heartless to use that example. But let me tell you something. I grew up in this atmosphere, okay? And there is no politically correct folk. There are those individuals who simply want what they want when they want it, how they want it. Okay, there's no fear or reverence for the one true God. There's a disrespect concerning the things of the Lord as well as the people of the Lord. And so when you got a lot of this sort of thing happening repeatedly, where people could care less about what you're going through, you have no choice but to either safeguard yourself, or you can go through the fires and continue to make excuses for ignorant people. I mean, it's up to you. 10 signs and symptoms of a panic attack, also known as a mental breakdown or nervous disorder or mental disorder. Psychotic breakdown, some folks will look up that as well. But let's zero in on this panic attack, and then we're going to talk about how it plays into why some folks simply don't want to be bothered with family. 10 signs and symptoms of a panic attack. A pounding heart, chest pain. You may well worry about having a heart attack. Difficulty with breathing, fearing you are going to choke. They need to be more specific here from someone who has been there and done it. But there's also a fear that you're going to die, okay? Feelings of unreality, as if you're not of this world. A sense of detachment from yourself. Fear of going crazy and losing your mind, okay? We're going to find out a bit more on this particular site called professional-counseling.com. Consulista. The article is The Signs and 7 Common Causes of a Nervous Breakdown. Sometimes individuals will feel like there's a relationship disaster of some sort. Sometimes they have evidence and proof. Other times it's not a relationship issue of a great magnitude to those on the outside looking in, but it is to the one who's going through a lot, especially if a person finds out that they're being lied to, cheated on. Separation and divorce will also contribute to a nervous breakdown. Some of you all took some relatives a bit too lightly when they went through their divorces. Others, you thought she was going to be okay and all right once she separated from that man, and she wasn't. Others in same-sex relationships, they go through their share of issues, and people can be very cold because they don't agree with that sort of lifestyle. A traumatic event or perhaps a series of traumas, that will also cause a mental breakdown. A drip-drip effect, finally taking its toll, not unusual in emergency service personnel and when caring for someone who suffers from a long-term illness. Basically, you start to experience all sorts of odd behavior within yourself as you're trying to help other people. And you can't quite get a hold of what's happening to you, but it just doesn't feel right on the inside. Other work-related stress will also contribute to a nervous breakdown, panic, anxiety attacks, mental disorders. Not having eaten or slept enough. This is a contributor. This had something to do with an anxiety attack that I had some time back. I hadn't eaten, and the next thing you know, my body was shaking, my nerves were on edge, and my stomach, of course, was very hungry. Once I ate the food, I was good to go. Yes, something as simple as food can trigger things like that. Domestic violence is definitely a serious challenge with so many that will sooner or later cause you to go into some type of mental breakdown. The best way that I could explain it from my personal experience was that my body no longer wanted to be present. Simply put, something happens where your body says, enough is enough, I cannot deal with this is too much. Soon after talking to my mother a few years back, and a few months prior to, I had lost my grandmother. I ended up having a panic anxiety attack that was quite severe. Ended up going to the hospital. The doctor asked me what all was taking place with me at that particular time, and I told him, simply put, I was going through some family issues, and I was very specific about those, and he recommended I had no business getting involved with any of it. Okay? Any of it. When you have a doctor that tells you that you don't need to be involved with some of the people, places, and things that trigger you, you better listen. Unless you want to end up having an attack that just might affect you permanently. You may not come back around. Some folks have had mental breakdowns and did not come back to their senses. I want to take you over to healthline.com. What is a nervous breakdown? A nervous or mental breakdown is a term used to describe a period of intense mental stress. Okay? Notice, intense mental stress. During this period, you are unable to function in your everyday life. Okay? So the woman who has the mental breakdown soon after giving birth to a baby, it's not a good idea to give her the baby back and tell her take care of the baby. There's nothing that changes in her environment. There's no support system. You are asking for trouble. The man or woman who has recently lost his or her partner, it is not a good idea to leave that individual by his or herself for long periods of time. Somebody at some point is going to need to do a health and wellness check. If you can't make it, you can get somebody else to do it. But people who have gone through something very intense need to be watched. This term was once used to refer to a wide variety of mental illnesses. We're referring to the nervous breakdown, including depression. Oh, she just had a nervous breakdown. She was depressed. Oh, he's going through a lot. He may be suffering from anxiety. Oh, she's got a lot of stress lately. It could be acute stress disorder. You just never know. Although nervous breakdown is no longer considered a medical term, it's still used by many to describe intense symptoms of stress and an inability to cope with life's challenges. Okay? Strong people end up having mental breakdowns. People with much money have mental breakdowns. People with little money have mental breakdowns. People who have small families, large families, doesn't matter. People in a relationship, out of a relationship can be at risk of some type of mental breakdown. Sometimes what others see as a mental breakdown may actually be an undiagnosed mental illness. Okay? There isn't one agreed upon definition for what constitutes a nervous breakdown. It's generally viewed as a period when physical and emotional stress become intolerable and impair one's ability to function effectively. Now, you just got a mouthful of a lot, right, concerning a nervous breakdown. We know of family members and friends who have suffered all sorts of things. The words to describe what they went through wasn't necessarily nervous breakdown, but we know that something physical, psychological, behavioral occurred with them and caused them to no longer work for a period of time, to take care of children, to deal with partners, to participate in their beloved holiday celebrations, or stay up to par with their various hobbies. Okay? We don't call people crazy and stupid and strange and weird and I don't know what's wrong with her, so I'm just going to stop dealing with her. And meanwhile, there are those individuals who are called to stay connected to people who are going through much. Okay, they are called to do wellness checks. They are called to sit down and help them, at least for a period of time. But then if you care for someone else while you got your share of issues, it is best to pass those responsibilities on to professionals out there. Some folks income qualify as far as having people come by to take care of them, more specifically personal care assistants or nurses, people of that group, as opposed to family, because sometimes family will only do nothing more than send you back into that nervous breakdown or that beloved one who's going through much, and we don't want that. If people are not qualified, anointed, appointed to help others, they should not be forcing themselves just because the deceased said take care of so and so, or because you owe somebody something, or because they put pressure on you or influenced you or even manipulated you in such a way to be by their side, and you know full well you don't have the mental capacity nor the physical strength to deal with all that comes with them. Even God will tell people, let go. Let go. In Jesus' mighty name, let go. You have done all that you could possibly do. Depressive symptoms such as loss of hope and thoughts of suicide or self-harm are common signs of nervous breakdown. When you hear people say things like, I just don't want to live anymore, I can't wait to be home with Jesus, I've had enough of this life, if only I had enough courage to take myself out, you need to be on alert. Sooner or later, something is going to occur. Anxiety with high blood pressure, tense muscles, clammy hands, dizziness, upset stomach, and trembling or shaking. Some individuals had many of these signs leading up to their deaths. Okay? Pay attention, especially around holiday events. Insomnia. I can't seem to sleep. I don't know what's wrong with me. Some of you all heard about relatives having a combination of all of these symptoms. And for some of you all, you didn't pay close attention. You just thought they were just saying the same old because it happens so often. But these are signs that something bigger is about to take place. Hallucinations, they see things that nobody else sees. Extreme mood swings or unexplained outbursts. One minute she's so sweet and nice, next thing you know she's up in somebody's face, she's freaking out, she has an attitude problem, what is wrong with her? Once again, these are signs somebody's body is breaking down. Panic attacks, which include chest pain, detachment from reality and self, extreme fear, and difficulty breathing. Okay, some folks are on edge because of the money that's being spent, because of all of the pressure that's put upon them to be at this person's house and that person's house. Paranoia, such as believing someone is watching you or stalking you. Some folks won't even leave their homes because they're fearful that there's all sorts of bad stuff going on outside the home. Flashbacks of a traumatic event. This happens a lot with our veterans, which can suggest undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder. This also happens with those individuals who have been repeatedly sexually abused or tortured in some way. Okay, now here is where all of this ties into, why doesn't she come to the family event? Why doesn't he go over there and see about his mother or father or sister or brother? Why are they so standoffish? It's not what some individuals think people are going through, okay? People experiencing a nervous breakdown may also withdraw, here we go, may also withdraw from family, friends, and co-workers. Signs of such withdrawal include they avoid social functions and engagements. This was something that, as I learned more about anxiety disorders and had my share of panic anxiety issues, I realized this is why I did not want to attend some events, because of the way I was feeling on the inside, and I felt like I was out of control. Now, why would I want to be around a bunch of individuals and start freaking out on them? And then they say things like, is she going crazy? What's wrong with her? You see? But how soon some people forget, right? You tell them things, or they've witnessed some things, or they recall some things, but they figure since you haven't had one in a while, or you haven't told anyone that you had one in a while, I guess it's going to be okay and all right for you to show up. They tell you how you should feel. Lord Jesus. Eating and sleeping poorly are also some things that people experience. Now, if I'm eating and sleeping poorly, you don't want me coming around. Maintaining poor hygiene. In the hood, simply, that person hasn't taken a bath in a while and they stink, right? They have lost their sense of self. So they're not going to smell too good. They're not going to be in the best mood because they haven't been eating well and they've been sleeping poorly. And besides, they don't even want to be at the social functions because they've been coming up with all sorts of excuses as to not be there. Okay, some folks don't want to go through another nervous breakdown or panic anxiety attack, so they simply say from the start, I am not going to be there because I know what my triggers are. But once again, when you're talking to ignorant people, they don't know anything about triggers. They don't know anything about mood swings and paranoia and panic attacks. But then for those who are very rude, they'll simply say, yeah, you got all that, girl. Keep your ASS on home. You see. Yes, we got those. Calling in sick to work for days or not showing up to work at all. Their income is affected. They may have already done this, and so lo and behold, a family situation arises. I can't miss any more work. You see. Isolating yourself in your home. This happens as well, right? Because you just had a panic anxiety attack or some type of nervous breakdown. Who wants to be around a bunch of people? Who wants to be in the atmosphere and he or she is concerned that maybe another situation is going to take place? So there are those things that people do in order to get over some of the challenges, such as taking baby steps. They walk to the door, they look out the door, they're good, and they close the door. Then the next day, they open up the door, they step out, now they made it to the patio. And then the next day, they made it down the sidewalk. And then the next day, they're back in their car. They started, but they are not driving anywhere. And they just do these small things until they get enough courage to break through the fear, the worry, the stress, while they're being medicated for some folks, while they're participating in various healthy eating and exercise. There's some things that people do in order to break out of the traumatic situation that has just taken place, right? And some folks simply don't want to be reminded or be bothered by the triggers, and so they avoid them, and they do well for months, for days, for weeks, for years. Okay, leave some folks alone when they tell you that they have had their share of mental breakdown, nervous breakdown, and they're on that slow climb back up again. They don't need you to trigger them. Right? Especially loudmouth, silly, ignorant, or foolish family members and friends. So I came across this particular article called What I Wish My Family Knew About My Anxiety During the Holidays. And I thought that this particular article is definitely one that some folks can wrap their head around, especially if they've gone through this sort of thing with their family. So as this computer is taking its time to load this article, I'm going to go back to the article on Healthline, the risk factors that lead to a nervous breakdown. And those would be a person may report having a nervous breakdown when stress is too much for them to bear. That stress can be caused by external influences. Some of those risk factors include persistent work stress. This is why some folks are told you need to start praying and asking the Lord to help you in terms of finding different employment. It's getting to be too much for you, okay? And then, of course, put your resumes out and do whatever it takes, because money is not that important if you're not going to be one day available to make the money, you see. Recent traumatic events such as a death in the family, this was what triggered one of my panic anxiety attacks. And I was deeply hurt because the people who knew of that relative, it seemed like after it was all said and done, they really didn't care too much to follow up to find out how the rest of the family was doing. So it was one of those things that was tough at that time. Not the recent death of my mother, this was another relative. Serious financial issues such as going into foreclosure, a major life change such as a divorce, poor sleep and relaxation, personal history of anxiety disorders. Usually if you have a history of anxiety disorders, you're more likely to have future attacks. Family history of anxiety disorders. A lot of times family have this sort of thing going on, but they were just told so-and-so just went crazy one day. Or so-and-so had a nervous breakdown, girl, but she's okay, she's all right. She had kids and everything else. But there was a lot of symptoms and a lot of things that would show up, and the family just dismissed it as that's how she is. Okay. Recent injury or illness that makes daily life difficult to manage. Okay. Sometimes people will have that accident, or they'll have something that was sudden, that was traumatic, an illness that is terminal even. And so these sorts of things contribute to the anxiety, to what we call a nervous breakdown or a mental disorder. Okay. Let's see if that article showed up. Okay, this was one of those that was written around Christmas time, close to Christmas time, by Hillary White, and it's got a lot of love in this particular article, and that's the reason why I chose it, in addition to the fact that it is an article related to what I'm talking about today, about anxiety, panic attacks, things of that sort. She titles it, "What I Wish My Family Knew About My Anxiety During the Holidays." She starts off saying she hates the holidays, okay? And she really means it. She hates the holidays, okay? She finds that she's experiencing a lot of anxiety around the holiday season, and this isn't just the typical stress that some people have. This is a type of anxiety where she doesn't want to be around people, okay? She said that she felt like she was an actor that was playing a role even in front of people that she's closest to. And so she wrote this article because she wanted her family to be more understanding in terms of how she feels during the holiday season, and not to take what she's doing personally. She says that she doesn't hate coming to see them, right? She just panics over the planning to get there. And see, selfish people don't get this. They really don't. They don't factor in how much it's going to cost. They don't offer to pay for people to come. They don't look at folks' work schedules. They don't think about, all of the typical stuff that goes into putting the effort in to pack to get children ready, especially whiny children, little children, rebellious children, children that's going through puberty. They don't factor in all of that. I just want you to come and bring the kids, you see. And so a person who has a history of panic anxiety, or they have their share of issues, it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. You got some folks, it's just an excuse. It's not an excuse. When you go through something that has a traumatic effect on you and you don't want to experience that all over again, You do the types of things that doctors and other professionals have told you to keep you from going into that place again. That brings up the anxiety, right? Increases it, and all of that. But once again, selfish people, they always have selfish things to say, don't they? It's not about being understanding. It's not about being compassionate. It's about what? Whatever they want. So she wants them to know getting out of a routine makes her feel unbalanced, right? When you're used to life being very simple, a lot of people who have gone through nervous breakdowns, anxiety disorders, what have you, they take good advice. They want their days to be planned and planned well. They don't want to have to experience anything that just throws everything off. But if it does, usually they can manage it in their environment, in their city, around the people they're familiar with. But when you go somewhere else in somebody else's territory, right, and somebody tells you, we get up at this particular time each day, and this is what we do, and blah, 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 there is going to be anxiety raised. Because for the simple fact is that you already have your share of challenges, and now here comes somebody placing all of these things upon you. When you have heavy levels of anxiety, yes, you do become a bit irritated. You might have the attitude, bit angry, and folks, they misconstrue that. Oh, in the African American community, it's considered disrespectful. It's disrespectful when you raise your voice. It's disrespectful if you're talking with a high pitch. It's disrespectful if you're looking crooked-eyed from across the room, So, meanwhile, they don't know you're going through a lot on the inside. And they don't want to sit down and go deep with you about how you feel, or what you're going through, or what your days or weeks or months have been like, or even years, if they haven't seen you in a while. So, some folks, I'm sorry, can't make the event. I know there's not going to be anybody there who's going to understand what I'm going through, and they've already marked me as crazy. Next. Right? You're going to protect yourself when you know you have your share of difficulties. She says that she's grateful for the things that these relatives do, right? Planning a Christmas holiday. It takes a lot of effort. But you got some of these folks, especially narcissists, who they want you to make a big deal about their spread of food. They want you to make a big deal about the gifts they bought. They want you to make a big deal about all of their decorations. And if you, who are already high-strung, already had maybe a panic anxiety attack the other day, okay, nervous breakdown, what have you, if you don't react in the way that they want you to react, oh, she's so ungrateful, she's ignorant, she's rude. I'm telling you. Some folks are very hard, very cold. Once again, they're not considering what you may have gone through. Even if you did explain it to them, they're going to eye roll and deep sigh. She wasn't excited about all what I bought and all of the work that I put in and the food. And I mean, come on now. But you see, here this woman has to write an article to help some folks understand what she goes through. And then you don't tell everybody in the family your personal business, right? You don't want everybody to know, yes, the other day I went through something, or this particular time period of my life I had experienced a mental breakdown of sorts, and I don't want to be around people who's going to trigger me, but da 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 da. Maybe I'll see you guys after the holiday or when there's less people around. Once again, selfish people don't get that. They don't understand. And I just gave some folks an idea. Maybe you would like to go when there's less people around. That's what I used to do. When my grandmother was living, I'd wait till after a holiday and I'd have one-on-one time with her, and we'd have quality time. But everybody in that little apartment that she had, and most of them were smokers, I mean, it was too much. And some of them liked to get high before they showed up to the family event. And now my anxiety levels are raised because I don't know if a fool is going to act stupid. And I don't know if I'm going to have to, watch my mother's back, because I knew at the time that she didn't get along with certain people. It was just too stressful. But how soon some people forget. And now we got folks who are mimicking that lifestyle all over again, bringing children and grandchildren into all of the dramas and traumas. So this brings me to the next point. Being around people constantly can be exhausting. I mean, there was no start time and end time. It was all day. Okay? It was all day, some of these holiday events. And if you didn't drive, and at that time I didn't drive, then you were stuck. You were stuck. Letting people who deal with anxiety have their space and alone time, right? That's important. But you got people who like to suffocate. You got controlling people. You got abusive people. Where are you going? Who you talking to? Why are you over there? You need to sit over here with us. Okay? The preparation and expectation can be a lot for her. She was explaining this once again to her family members. The last thing she wanted to do is hurt anyone's feelings or upset them. But she's got to protect herself, right? She knows that emotions run high during holiday events, and so she didn't want to be caught up in all of that. You know, it can be very, very stressful for some people, and she wanted them to respect the fact that she needs to be alone at times, right? Some folks, they gotta be alone for long times because people just don't want to do right. It's sad, but so true. Some people had to cut off some folks since they've had their mental challenges and physical disabilities, and you know the rest for some of you all, because you just could not be triggered. You could not be brought into an atmosphere where people were going to cuss and fuss and act like fools and then get you all upset. And then the next thing you know, for some of you all who've already been in jail, you don't want to go back to jail, okay, behind some of these people. So yes, communication in her article, she says, is key, but I hate to say it though, in some communities, in some cultures, you can communicate until you're blue in the face. Some people are just not going to understand. They're just not going to understand, but I appreciate her very much for sharing her information across the internet like that. Now, when we get into the scriptures about worry, real simple. We are instructed in Matthew 6:34, and this is a very popular scripture. It is, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Some people worry the day before they are headed out the door to go to the airport, to that family event. Others, they worry weeks and weeks in advance, and they try to prep themselves mentally. Some folks have had to have cognitive behavioral therapy, learning how to respond as opposed to react when conflict arises. Others have had to go through hypnosis or hypnotherapy just to deal with relatives. Yes, it gets deep. Okay. And yes, I'm giving some folks some tips if you just can't seem to deal with the family issues, okay? And you've prayed and you've talked to the ministers. Some folks have to be medicated before they show up to see family, okay? Yes. The Bible, once again, does tell us, though, not to worry. Matthew 6:27 says, who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his lifespan? So for some folks, you're just being reminded. You don't need to worry about these family holiday events or any other holiday event, because if God spoke to you and told you that this isn't the year to be around certain people, places, and things, then why don't you just listen and stop the worrying? Usually we worry about things because, number one, we have no business even doing some of the stuff that we do. Case in point, a woman worrying about all the money she has to spend for a Christmas decor for a family holiday event. First up, should you be even spending your money? Is that even your money to spend? Sometimes women are spending their husband's money, or their husband is spending the woman's money, his wife's money, to impress the family. So all that worrying is happening because some people are doing things they shouldn't be doing. Once again, Bible reminds us, Philippians 4:6, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. So what is your request? Do you really want to go? If you don't really want to go, then don't go. And present that request to the Lord. You'll be surprised. He may say, I don't want you to go. And what are we to do? 1 Peter 5:7, we're supposed to cast all our anxiety on him because he cares for us, right? He cares for us. He really does. He cares for you, right? But we got so many people who they're always talking about, I got to do this, I got to do that. And when you ask them, well, why? Who told you you got to do this and got to do that? Well, and then eventually you find out it's just them putting all sorts of stress on themselves as well as their husbands, wives, children, grandchildren. It's ridiculous, you see. And what are people going to do in your absence anyway, right? If you were to pass away, think about it. Life was going to go on anyway, right? So why are you stressed about, I got to be there, I got to do this and that, you see? Luke 12:26, and I'll close out this message. I hope someone feels encouraged today. I really do. Not to be getting yourself caught up in this worry and anxiety and bringing about another panic, anxiety attack, or nervous breakdown. Because I tell you, here's one who I've learned over the years to protect my sanity. Okay? Luke 12:26, since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Right? Why do we worry about the stuff that we don't have any control over? Why do we worry about the people who we have no control over? Right? You know, you don't have control over that mouthy woman, mouthy man, mouthy relative. So why in the world would you put yourself in an atmosphere with somebody who cannot control their tongue? But we have those that, well, that's so and so. Well, if you do have to go, you better make sure that you avoid that person as best you possibly can. But it's kind of hard when the event's in somebody's living room and there's really nowhere to go if you didn't drive yourself. I just thank the Lord for just freeing us once again out of all of the trials and the tribulations and the weirdness that goes on around family gatherings. I just thank him. He knows what's about to go down. That's why he keeps us out of it. You see, we end up not being on the front page news, so to speak, because we simply go to the one true God and we say, Lord, should I go on that plane, that train, that trolley, that bus? Should I be the one driving or should I have somebody else drive? Should I be the one that has that quiet time at home this year? Or is it my calling for me to be out there? And if it is my calling for me to be out there, I ask that your angels of protection go before me in Jesus' mighty name. I pray, Lord Jesus, that you just anoint me from head to toe and give me the words to speak when the time comes to make that trip. You see, I just pray these sorts of prayers in Jesus' mighty name. And I'm telling you, the Lord has oftentimes told me that it is not my time, it's not my season, and to stand down. And sometimes you got to stand down during times where everybody else says things like, well, you should stand up. No, sorry, that's your opinion. That's why we walk with the one true God. So that way we're not influenced by wayward men and wayward women, people who are not sold out for the Lord, people who do not want to study and show thyself approved unto God. We keep afar. Right? Especially if you are in ministry, you got to be careful where you go anyway, because you got people who unfortunately don't want to see you succeed. They want to see you fail. And if you act out of pocket, they're ready to whip out that cell phone in a minute, you see, or that camera or whatever else they got to record you acting like a complete fool. God is a good God, a righteous God, just a loving God, and also a God that will judge those who are enemies, who want to force people to do things knowing full well that they have mental anxiety. Okay? Shame on them. May God be with you. Thank you so much for listening to YouTube Enterprise 7. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment. Also, you are welcome to check the description box. And if you feel so moved to give, we do welcome giving. Thank you in advance. Blessings to you.